Joining us now for more perspective is Niall Stanage, White House columnist with our partners at The Hill. Niall, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it. So let's talk RFK here. He's currently polling at about 15 to 20%. Again, that's in some polls. That's against an incumbent president. What does that tell you?
Tells you that there's a certain amount of unease with that incumbent president. And of course, we know that from other polls that don't involve RFK Jr. There is serious concern among Democrats as well as Republicans and independents, particularly about President Biden's age. Now, for Mr. Kennedy, I think a crucial question has to be answered, which is the support that he is drawing at the moment based purely on skepticism about Biden? Is it purely enthusiasm for Kennedy himself, or is it some amalgamation of the two?
All right, so Niall, it's certainly no secret that Kennedy can be very polarizing, even among his own party. Will he have to backtrack on some of his, more well-publicized ideas, we can think vaccines, in order to try to appeal to a broader audience? And if so, can he even do that at this point?
So it depends really what his objective is. Is he really, truly running to be president of the United States, or is he running to give greater amplification to the views he holds? If he is to have any chance of beating President Biden, and we have to say that's a really, really uphill struggle, then obviously he needs to expand his support. Even with the levels of support he's getting, Nichole, he's still about 40 points behind the incumbent president. So obviously that has to change if he wishes to really make a serious run against Biden. On the other hand, if he just wants to make his views known, use his candidacy as a vehicle for those views, then that completely changes the dynamic. It's not so important then to broaden your appeal.
And Niall, you said there that it certainly would be an uphill battle. That's no secret. So let's shift to the other side of things, President Biden. Behind the scenes, is the administration showing any signs about potentially being worried about a real threat by the same party challenger, someone like RFK?
I actually wrote about this about a week ago, Nichole, and the general sentiment among people, whether it's at the White House or in the Democratic Party more broadly, is that they should ignore RFK Jr. That's, of course, speaking from a pro-Biden perspective on the part of those people. They feel that engaging with him would elevate him, would give him a status that they don't believe he deserves to have. Even if the White House or President Biden's allies were attacking Mr. Kennedy, it would ultimately have the effect of raising him up because he would be seen as worthy of those attacks. They just figure that they can ignore him. If he putters along at 15 or 20%, that still doesn't pose any real danger to President Biden becoming the Democratic nominee as he runs for a second term.
All right, fair enough. Well, Niall, as Kelly Beeson was telling us, we know the president here today in Chicago talking about economics, more specifically what he's calling his Bidenomics. He's certainly doing work to try to turn things around, but we are still in the middle of, what many would call an economic crisis. So many families are still struggling. So how much work does the president have to do to try to convince the American people that he's doing things correctly?
He has to do a lot of work because the economy has been a bad issue for him, and the economy is often decisive in presidential elections. Now, if you talk to the White House, they would argue that they're not getting credit for some elements of his economic record, particularly job creation, which has, in fairness, been very strong during the Biden presidency. But I think they are still dogged by inflation. And yes, I know inflation has come down significantly off its peak, but that was such a bruising experience for so many millions of Americans when inflation was at its highest levels, that I think that has really affected public perception of Biden's economic record, and he hasn't, frankly, been able to find an antidote to that dissatisfaction.
Yeah, certainly still working there. All right, Niall Stanage, live for us in Washington. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.